All right. Okay. Well, I'd like to welcome you all to this Speak in the Dean Speaker Series. Welcome. Public service really has been a part of Penn Law School in so many ways. Last night I was met with a whole group of students who'd spent last summer across the globe in various human rights activities, and it was an incredible story. And last week I was meeting with a group of students who were down in DC involved in federal government. But today we're going to hear from somebody who has spent her entire career truly committed to public service and making the streets of Philadelphia safe. It is truly an incredible story, and there's really nobody in a better position to talk about the question of prosecutors and social entrepreneurship. Lynne Abraham, as I said, has spent her entire career here in Philadelphia and in government. She was the first person in her family to graduate from high school, and then she worked her way through Temple undergraduate and Temple Law School at a time when it was incredibly unusual for a woman to graduate from law school, let alone to be a leading member of the legal profession. When she looked around for jobs in private firms, they were not hiring women at that time. But that was not going to stop Lynne Abraham. She started as an attorney in the Regional Housing and Urban Development Office, and a series of different jobs: assistant DA, executive director of the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority, legislative consultant for City Council, municipal court judge, common pleas court judge, and then finally, in 1991, she became District Attorney of Philadelphia, the first woman ever to serve in that position as District Attorney. Now, if you think about it, 1991, that's when many of the students at this law school were in kindergarten. And since that time, she has led the crime-fighting efforts in this city. It's really an amazing record. She leads an office which has over 300 attorneys in it and processes 75,000 cases a year. We talk here, we have one of the best, I think the best criminal law faculty in the country, but District Attorney Abraham is really in the position of dealing with mass judgment, what it means on a day-to-day level to protect the victims of this city. She's also in a wonderful position to talk about the issue of entrepreneurship. Among the specialized units she's created are the repeat sex offenders, the cybercrime, as well as public nuisance crimes offices. She's well known for advocating on behalf of victims' rights. She created the Latina Domestic Violence Project, the Elder Justice Project, a drug treatment court, and gun court. She's also stepped up efforts to help at-risk youth and made incredible efforts to recruit more minorities to her office. At this point, close to half of the office, I believe, is female, and 25% are minorities. I think it says it all if you hear her description of what her purpose is as district attorney. She says, "Our collective goal is simple: make Philadelphia a better and safer place through ethical and effective investigations and prosecutions while instituting smart crime initiatives." That really says it all. She's leaving her post after 18 years with a really incredible legacy. Probably most important of all is the integrity. There has never been a whiff of any sense of corruption in that office during her 18 years of stewardship. She's been in the center of the hurricane for 18 years. She's candid, she's tough, but she's seen results. I think it says it all. I want to quote how she described her job. "If I was a man, people would think I was bold. Because I'm a woman, they think I'm a pain in the ass." That is a classic statement by Lynne Abraham. In fact, one newspaper story about her recently headlined, they said, "If Abraham were a man, she'd be president." Well, we don't know exactly what she is going to do when she steps down as district attorney, but she truly leaves an incredible legacy here in Philadelphia and a safer Philadelphia, and a strong history of public service that should be a model for us all. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the District Attorney of Philadelphia, Lynne Abraham.
Thank you, Dean Fitz. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's good. Can you, let me just turn that off so I won't have any feedback, I hope? Or can we, where's our electronic guru?
You're asking the wrong
It won't worry? It doesn't matter? Okay, I'll just put it down. Thank you very much. And I'll turn this down just ever so slightly. I thank Dean Fitz for that wonderful introduction. Is there a setting on this too? No, there isn't. Okay, I'll just leave it go. And I thank him for that generous and kind introduction. I'm delighted to be here. I told Dean Fitz and Professor Bibas that I had a confession to make. Of course, after I visited the dean's office, I said, before I go upstairs, I must rub the nose of the goat. Now, that may have struck a surprising chord in his mind. How does she know about the goat? She went to Temple University Law School, which is true. I did. However, I should have gotten a joint degree from the University of Pennsylvania because even though I was working my way through law school and very poor, I lived at a tiny apartment on 41st Street. And because Temple's library closed at 9 and it was a little desolate up there, it was kind of desolate down here too, but a little more happening. So rather than stay at Temple, I went home after class, had something to eat, zipped on down here, and in those days, you didn't need all of this, you know, this stuff. We had closed stacks, you had open stacks. You had Sharswood Hall, and I used to live here. I came here every day from 5:30 or 6 o'clock until midnight. And this law school was the reason I think I graduated from Temple Law School. And I'll just tell you one more humorous anecdote. You know, I liked a quiet library and would frequently go into the stacks, but there was an especially difficult person who always seemed to be on the phone, smoking disgustingly smelling cigars in a no-smoking environment, and incessantly chattering at a very high volume. And finally, I didn't know who this fellow was, but I walked over to his office that way, and the door was ajar, and I said, "Excuse me, sir, could you either close your door or talk a little quieter? I'm really trying to pass this test." He said, "Oh, okay," closed the door. That was Professor Anthony Amsterdam. So Tony Amsterdam, who turned out to be the son of Gus and Vala Amsterdam, who later became very good friends with me, didn't even say, "Who are you?" I went to the classes of Professor Krasnowiecki, and I asked every professor here problems I was having, whether it was Dr. Meacham, whose book I was using at Temple. He was teaching agency here. I just went up right to the master and said, "Professor Meacham, can you answer this question?" So I know I'm on tape, and I'm saying this for your benefit, Dean Fitz, that I don't know whether I would have been where I am this moment if it weren't for Penn. Now, I'm not suggesting that you open the doors again to ruffians like me, but I do want to make a very generous suggestion that because of Penn's open stacks, not all this other security business, which we really didn't have to worry about then, I am really a dual recipient of both certificates of graduation. So I thank you for that. I know I'm in good company because Bernard G. Siegel is up on the wall. Everybody knew him, knew that his middle initials stood for God. And if you knew Bernie Siegel as I did, you would understand why he has that appellation. With that, I want to tell you about the District Attorney's Office, a wonderful institution, and I really want to encourage anybody in this room who is thinking about public service or who is thinking about practicing law that there is no better place to practice law, where the rubber meets the road and where you have the most intimate capacity to change the way people live their lives and affect real change in the community than working in the District Attorney's Office. Now, having said that, I want to expand on that because I want to talk to you about some of the programs that I've instituted. And I'll blow my own horn, and I confess it is a little bit self-laudatory. However, most people don't know about these things. Many people on the so-called inside do. But I think you should know about to show you where your horizons can reach once you are in the public sector and where you can really change people's lives. Yes, of course, you can change people's lives by being an honest, hardworking, investigative prosecutor. But I found that prosecuting crime is good, but it's always after the fact. And the tail should never wag the dog. We do a more effective job and a better job, to my way of thinking, if we can prevent crime from happening in the first place. So you have to be able to change the way people think and act and do things and how they operate within whatever community they happen to live. And I want to talk to you about a few programs that I've started which might give you an indication of how I think. And I'm going to start with something so relevant that it is a little bit painful. In today's New York Times, there is a huge article on the front page about the Chicago crime statistics and the fact that young kids are being killed at a record pace in Chicago. And they've hired this wonderful fellow to be the sort of the overseer of what's happening in Chicago and in their school system in particular. And they've concentrated, or they're going to concentrate on figuring out, of all the children who are going to the Chicago school system, they're going to isolate and identify those 10,000 or so students whom they believe are the most at risk of killing or being killed or getting involved in serious violent offenses. Well, that's really wonderful. This is 2008-9. And I want to draw your attention to something that we started back in 1999. And a monograph has been written about it, which you're certainly welcome to look at. It's written by PublicPrivate Ventures, and it's called Alive at 25. Now, how did this come about? This is something that Chicago is essentially, not identically, but emulating. I didn't say copy, emulating. It won't be the same. It won't be on all fours, but it has the same features. And here's what we found out. We found out in Philadelphia that most of our homicides and serious violent crimes, not all, but most, were committed by and between young African-American men between the ages of 14 and, let's say, 25, who frequently skipped school, had no serious history of going to school on any regular basis, who came from disruptive or dysfunctional families, separated families whose mothers and or fathers, assuming they were at home at all, were disengaged from their children, who had a multiplicity of issues, some large, some small. They were frequently, but not always, under court supervision. They were really on the cutting edge of deciding at that young age, 14 to 24, whether they were going to live or die by their own conduct, their associates, what they were doing and what they were failing to do. And so we took a trip up to Boston, and we met with a wonderful guy named Gene Rivers, who was a pastor up in Dorchester. And he was a black man who lived in Philadelphia, whose mother was frightened when he was a kid that he was going to get sucked into the gang activity, and so she took him from the evil streets of Philadelphia to Boston, where he became well educated and became totally invested in the community. And this fabulous human being, Eugene Rivers, experimented in gang activity because they had it there in Boston, but then decided this was not a good thing. And so he became invested in young people's lives, and he developed this what's called 10-point program of how to save youths. And in Roxbury, Massachusetts, which is a neighborhood which you can, like many of our neighborhoods in Philadelphia, you can see downtown Boston, but most of those kids will never get there. I mean, they can take the subway or a bus to get there. That's not what I'm talking about. They can reach the downtown of the city, but they'll never be part of it. They'll always be in their neighborhood looking at this fabulous skyline, but never be an active part of it. They'll probably grow up, live and die at a very young age within 5 blocks of where they were born. So we took great instruction from Gene Rivers and his cohort of colleagues at the Etta Baker House, talked to some former gangbangers, talked to the police department, who built their new police headquarters, not where the shishi folks live, but in some very, very difficult neighborhoods, because they wanted to be closer to most of the people that they served and be a friendly presence, a benign presence, not a frightening or an off-putting presence. We took the lessons that we learned from Gene Rivers, plus we cast a wide net to see what other people were doing, and we came up with this program called A Blueprint for a Safer Philadelphia. And I didn't do this by myself either. I take no exclusive credit for it. We had help from our state legislators, in particular Dwight Evans and Vincent Fumo, who was working on the gun angle of it. We had a whole cadre of priests and ministers and street folks and teachers and probation officers and judges. And we came up with this program called A Blueprint for a Safer Philadelphia. And essentially what we did, boiled down to its absolute minimum, is we identified those kids in the community who were of school age, who were most likely to kill or be killed. We did this through court records, through family histories, through neighborhood surveys, and we then flooded their neighborhood and them with probation officers, street workers who used to be gangbangers or killers themselves who had come out on parole, the second chancers. We assigned these gang workers, or street workers as we called them, to these kids because there's nobody who knows what a 15 or a 16-year-old kid is going through unless perhaps they've gone through it themselves. I mean, I didn't have the same background or knowledge. I've never robbed a bank or beaten up some old lady or sold drugs or any of that other stuff. So, you know, they could listen to me, but they wouldn't hear me. They had to be able to hear and relate with and to somebody who had had that experience. We flooded them with social services, psychiatric services, drug treatment services, tutorial services, anything that they needed, jobs. We placed them in jobs if a job was available to them. No, a 13-year-old can't usually get a job of any meaning, so we assigned other things to them. If their families needed help, their mom was stressed out, we gave her social services, extra loving care, tried to make sure that this family had the best chance of succeeding. That kid, and I'm going to call them kids, because that's what they are, those kids couldn't turn around. They couldn't bend over to tie their shoe, or turn around to go to a store without meeting a cop, a probation officer, a judicial officer, a teacher, a mentor, a community activist, a street worker, or anybody else who was anything other than assigned to their case. We were all over them, to be short, like a cheap suit. And our success rate was astounding. Was it 100%? No. But it was darn good. We got those kids, the kids that we concentrated on, and we didn't take in everybody. We concentrated our most efforts on those kids who we knew from history would be most likely to kill or be killed. And we try to direct all of our thoughts, our processes, and our actions towards him. But we didn't know if we were really succeeding, because there's a tendency to say, oh yeah, we've had a great success, and fold up your tent and go home. So this public-private venture came in and analyzed what we were doing. It's remarkably similar to what they're going to do in Chicago. So after I leave here today, having just seen this article in the New York Times, I'm going to write the author of the article. Here is the article. Ta-da, eureka. Here it is. From the study of the 500 shootings, Mr. Huberman said, officials know that deadly violent outbursts are not truly random. That the students at the highest risk of violence by statistics are most likely to be black, male, without a stable living environment, in special education, skipping an average of 42% of school days, at neighborhood and alternative schools, and have a record of in-school behavior flare-ups that is about 8 times higher than the average student. Duh. Blueprint and alive at 25. And that's the whole idea, because since most homicides in Philadelphia are between the ages of 14, 15, and 24, the goal for us was to have these kids be alive at 25. And this program does work. So I'm going to write Mr. Huberman and the author of the article and say, I'll be happy to go out and talk to Mr. Huberman if he wants. I'll be happy to send him the material if he doesn't want me to come out and visit. But I can tell him that this program can and does work if it is promised sustained funding and no diminution of support and total participation by all the active partners. It's a partnership, and that's what it is. So everybody has to get on board, and that is extremely important. I also wanted to talk to you about something else that I've done, which I think is, unique. I won't say I know unique, but I think unique. As a district attorney, I am totally invested in the community. I don't spend a whole lot of time in the office, thank goodness, because I don't think I'm most effective behind a desk. Maybe I've missed my message, but I don't think I am. I have to go out and see, what is the community thinking? And I don't mean a community, I mean the entirety of the community. What are they thinking? What are their issues? What are their problems? I can't do potholes. If they come to me and say, oh, this pothole or my alley light, I can call somebody. I can hope that if I call, it might get fixed. But that's not really where my heart and soul is. I want to know what their total issues are. How can I help them? And what can I do for them? What can we do with and for each other? And I found something really remarkable in the community. There were an astounding number of leaders in the community. Mostly, I regret to say, women. I'm not regretting because they're women. I'm loving that they're women. I would like to see more men who are totally invested in their community. There are men who are invested. But most of the people who I found who were the go-to people in a community were women. They were the ones who made the calls. They were the ones who led the protests. They were the ones who were looking after the kids. They were the glue of the community. They were the surrogate mothers. They were the idea people. They were the ones who interfaced with the government. These women were sensational. And I said, you know, I have to do something about that. And I sort of put it at the back of my mind. What I thought I would do to try to help the community is, what could I do with these kids? Maybe they need some leadership direction. So I toyed with the idea with a young man who came to work for me from a large law firm who was totally bored. I'm not suggesting that your law firm will totally bore you, but if you're like me, it would totally bore me. So, because I don't want to carry papers for 10 years. I want to go into court yesterday. And in the district attorney's office, you get 3 weeks of training, and then you're given 60 cases and say, sink or swim. So if you want to do that, it's fabulous. You'll find out what a great Penn law education will teach you, and we're going to make you a first-class litigator. So, having been a litigator, having been a judge, I said, well, let me see what I can do with leadership, because I believe that leadership needs to come to the fore, and these young kids need leadership. But I found that we started to get a charter school together, and then we ran into a mountain of red tape and resistance, so we said, this is not for us. So what we did was something else. We changed direction, because I talked to my partner, Dave Castro, who came from Pepper, to work in the district attorney's office in the public task force, which if I have time, I'll talk to you about, because I want to leave time for questioning, another community outreach program. And I said, you know, these fabulous community leaders, these block captains, committee men and women, the glue of the community, they can only go but so far. What can we do to help these community-based leaders? So we sat around and chewed it over and went back and forth, and that's why I call it sort of a social entrepreneurship. We put together a program of leadership training, and it went along very well. And I'm going to try to skip ahead because I just don't have the time to devote to the infancy of the program. But then we decided, well, let me just take it for a minute. We thought that in the poorest communities, a good leadership training course would help these grassroots community-based leaders to get better results from government. Because when there's sort of diffusive thinking and they don't know what to do except scream and holler and protest and keep calling people who after a while they stop returning your phone calls, that was not working. So we trained these people to be leaders in how to do systems thinking, how to do critical thinking, how to work through problems. And actually it grew from Philadelphia, where we started, to 17 cities across Pennsylvania, all in poor or neglected neighborhoods, from Pittsburgh to Erie to Aliquippa to middle of the state, Harrisburg, Reading, York, and places in between. So we went from one city to 17 cities across Pennsylvania. And then we said, you know what these people really, really, really lack? A piece of paper that says, I went to college, or I have an accredited degree. So we looked around, and after a lot of backing and forthing, we finally hooked up with a 2-year college called Harcum College. And let me tell you about Harcum. Harcum was started by a lady named Harcum. And essentially back in the day, this was a school, which was really a finishing school for young ladies who, it was perceived, needed some genteel learning so they could become a proper society wife. And that's what it was, sort of a finishing school for rich young ladies. But over the course of years, it sort of transformed into a regular school. Mrs. Harcum went to her glory, and through a succession of changes of hands, it came into its present incarnation. It's a 2-year college. And we wanted to offer a college education to people who had previously never thought of going to college. So we hooked up with Harcum University, or Harcum College, and we are offering to our students, we've just started in the past couple of years, we have now about 300 students in this college program. Most of their tuition is paid for through grants and loans, lots of federal money, lots of grants and loans available to these individuals. And we are making sure that they have a 2-year course in leadership, systems thinking, critical listening, all the things that you need to be a leader, plus all of the other courses that one must take to get a 2-year associate's degree. This is an accredited school, so they can take that 2-year degree and take it to Temple or Penn or any other school and go on to get their baccalaureate, and many have. We have been so wildly successful with grassroots community leaders, people who never thought of themselves as college material. When I was a kid, I was told, well, you're not college material. You're poor, you don't have anything. Nobody in your family went to school. Who are you? You're some ragamuffin poor kid with nothing. You know, maybe you should think of, I don't know, selling shoes or donuts someplace. And that's what I was told my entire youth. You're not college material. That still happens today. Listening to Joanne Epps, the Dean of Temple University Law School, who in receiving the A. Leon Higginbotham Award, Dean Fitz and I were talking about the late, great A. Leon Higginbotham, was told that they thought that she ought to go into hairdressing school. She'd be a great hairdresser. Duh. Anyway, which of course was demeaning and degrading, just as it was to me years before. And being told that you're not a college material is a real put down. So I decided to defy all the traditional thinking about people like me or people similarly situated and went to school. This is the same thing that these people have been told all of their lives. Now they are engaged in college education. Now all you have to do is have a high school education or its equivalency, and we'll take care of all of the rest. We have been given a $3 million grant by the Knight Foundation. We've just won an Ashoka Fellowship. We've gotten just tons of money from the state and federal government. So we can offer these students, through our programs and our teaching, a 2-year certificate, an associate's degree in college. You have no idea what these ladies and gentlemen think about themselves when they get that piece of paper. It's hard work. It's college. A lot of them have been in the workforce, but they haven't been to school in a long time. It is a struggle. But these people have determination. Why am I doing that? Is it just because I like to feel good about things? Well, sure, I like to feel good. It's better than feeling bad. These leaders have the capacity to change their neighborhoods, their blocks, in so many ways. They will be the social entrepreneurs of the neighborhood. They will be able to moderate disputes. They will be able to do dispute resolution in a calm and effective way. They will be able to talk to a city councilman and know actually who their city council person is. They will know the systems of government. They will know how the federal system works, how the state system works, how the local system works. So when they need somebody, they know who to talk to and how to speak with them. These people are the future leaders of the city. I'm absolutely convinced that this is one of the best things I've ever done. This is growing at an incredible rate. Now you may say, well, what else are you doing about this? Well, we just went to the one of the big unions in Philadelphia, which has a tremendous cadre of workers, most of whom are high school dropouts. And we've encouraged them to not only go back to school to get their high school diploma or equivalency, but if they do, and for those who have already done this, we're going to put those people through this program to get them the piece of paper that they so desperately need. I mean, being a trash collector is no bad thing. The civil rights movement started with trash collectors, or part of the trash collectors in Memphis. So, you know, we can do terrific things with people who wouldn't ordinarily think of themselves as the next generation of leader. You don't think a whole lot of yourself, perhaps, although you think you're doing a valued service in doing trash, and there's nothing wrong with it. But how about if you're not only doing trash, but also working with kids who are going to be in trouble? How about changing the face and the whole texture of the community by being a leader? And that is what we're doing with that. So I-Lead is the name of the organization. It's called I-, and if you want to look it up, it's www.i-lead.org. Don't forget the dash, because it won't come up. Read about our success and take a look at it and think about it in terms of your next vision of social entrepreneurship, because that's what I think it is. I also want to talk about, since I mentioned it, some of the other things that we've done. Besides starting the I-Lead educational nonprofit, I started another 501c3 shortly after I became DA. And I thought that I could effectuate change that way as well, which all would be crime preventive. And there are a whole bunch of programs, again, which I don't have time to talk about at any length today, but perhaps at another time. But one of the things that we noticed was that healthcare in the underserved community, or the impoverished community, or the inner city, or whatever you want to call it, is frequently unavailable, either through lack of insurance, lack of funds, or lack of availability of physicians right in the community. So we started two distinct programs, one of which was called the Dia de la Mujer Latina. It was a Latino health fair, which is directed towards women, because in the Latino community, although it is a male, perhaps dominant group, the women in the family are not only the caregivers, but they take care of the children, and they're sort of, again, they can make their husbands perhaps go to a physician. They have to have health care available. So we started a health care fair for Latina women, their husbands, or significant others, and their children. And we offered free mammograms, free health screening, free prostate exams for their husbands, free this, that, or the other. It was phenomenally successful in the community where they lived. And we wanted to get people directed towards effective health care. We've expanded that somewhat, or changed it somewhat, because of a case that I read about in the Washington Post. There was and I love newspapers, so I'll be sad to see newspapers close. But there was a young boy named Diamonte Driver. Anybody know who Diamonte Driver is? Okay. Diamonte Driver was a 12-year-old kid who had never been to a dentist, because dentists are not usually opening offices in underserved communities. This young boy got an abscess in his tooth, which was neglected. And as a result of the neglect, it became sepsis, which went to his brain, and he died of a brain abscess, 12 years old, just for lack of going to a dentist. So we started a program with the Shine Corporation. The Shine family and its company is the third or second largest dental manufacturing company in the world. And we hooked up with them because Mr. Bergman is very closely affiliated with Penn's dental school. And he talked to us about increasing minority participation in the field of dentistry. And what we have done with that is part of our I-Lead program is health directed. Not only community leaders, but becoming dental hygienist, medical assistant, dental technician, and so forth. And this program with the Shine company is also, the full name is Henry Schein, S-H-E-I-N. It's traded on, I think, the New York Stock Exchange. So if you're interested in finding out about the Shine company, you certainly can do that. But the Bergman family was very much interested in doing this. So now we are having Diamante Days. We started our first Diamante Day in Reading, Pennsylvania, where there's only one high school. It has 5,000 kids. We're also opening a charter school in Reading, which I'll tell you about some other time. But But we had all these kids come in because what we did was we went to the National Dental Manufacturers Association, the traditionally African-American Dental Association, the American Dental Association, and the Latino Dental Association. We had great help from Dr. Ivan Lugo and Dr. Williams from the National Dental Association, and several dentists and technicians. They all flooded into Reading. And we had a Diamonte Day to make sure that these young people had dental screening and care made available to them at little or no cost for whatever mouth problems they were having, to avoid what happened to Diamonte Driver. So you may say, well, I don't know. This doesn't sound like a prosecutor. You're saying, what does this have to do with prosecution? Well, it has a lot to do with prosecution, because if you're taking care of people in a way that is socially responsible and making sure that they understand that this is not a government handout. I'm not going to do anything for you. I'm not going to do something instead of you're doing it. This is on you to take the responsibility. This shifts responsibility away from government to the people where it properly resides, I believe. It's the people that does it. Government shouldn't be doing all the things that it's doing, and the way to avoid or get out of the idea of the notion of the government coming here and giving you stuff is the way to make people socially responsible so that they are in charge. And on that note, let me just comment on one thing else that I read in the Times this morning, which very much disturbed me. Governor Schwarzenegger is now removing the requirement for people to work for welfare. I am sorry for this. I understand about the cost, and he's trying to trim his budget. But I do believe that we make better progress when we remove people from welfare and just giving them a check and making sure that they work. That's what we're trying to do. Get people out of poverty, out of dependence, into independence and leadership. That's the way we progress from where we were to where we can be. This is all good. And how does that affect the prosecutor? A healthy neighborhood, a neighborhood that has a good sense of community, a neighborhood that is imbued with the fact that we can do this together, that we all have social responsibilities, that we should look out for each other, that we should be responsible in the sense that we're going to make our neighborhood work, that we're going to be watching what happens on our streets, that we're going to clean our neighborhood. We're not going to just throw our trash and garbage and just wait till either the rats come or the councilman comes and cleans it up on a cleanup day. We're going to be responsible for our community. That is so empowering and ennobling. And it also has the impact of lessening crime and criminality. Because a neighborhood that is taking care of itself, a neighborhood where people are absolutely out on the street and committed to the sense of the community, there's going to be less crime, because people are going to know, oh, you can't go in this block or in this neighborhood because those people are out there watching. They're cooperating with the police. They're careful about their community. They know about crime, and they're not going to allow it to happen in their neighborhood. You get Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, who's the block captain and the leader. You won't have those ruffians and bad guys coming around and hanging in your neighborhood, because the neighbors won't allow it. And that's what suppresses crime. That's what prevents crime, and it works. Now, trust me, you don't make a tougher prosecutor than I am. Don't give me any excuses if you've robbed or killed somebody that your mother didn't love you. I'm really not interested. You're responsible, you have to pay the price. Isn't it better? Because I can't make somebody's head feel better. I cannot raise the dead. And I've seen a lot of dead kids. Lots and lots and lots of dead kids. Lots and lots and lots of dead women killed in domestic violence. Lots and lots of dead bodies. Lots and lots of drug overdoses. More of the drug overdoses than homicides. And you know, after a while, you have to say to yourself, I'm a tough prosecutor. I don't shy away from that. I'm proud of it. But I also know that we have a way of not only dealing with crime once it happens, but preventing crime from occurring in the first place. And these are just some of the programs. I just want to pay one last tribute. I probably won't get to public nuisances, but I want to say thanks to a Penn alum named Richard Rosen, who was so invested. He became a member of our family in the District Attorney's Office through a whole series of events, which I needn't describe here, but for over 10 years, he had scholarships that he paid the stipend to Penn law students for 10 years. The program is over now. I just want to tell you what he did. For Penn students who were looking for a summer job, who didn't want a traditional job in a law firm, but wanted to do something in the nature of public service, and paid the stipends of 2 Penn law students for 10 or 11 years. And Richard has become a very, very close friend of mine, and I want to thank Richard and Penn for participating in the district attorney's office. So that'll leave us whatever time we have. I don't know how much time we have, Dean. I'll let Professor Bibas and you all tell me when to go. So why don't you throw a question or two, and you can ask any question at all about anything.
Let me just, first I want to